We're moving on to a new panel discussion. There's about 6 of you coming up. Some of you have been here before. Shifting gears, we're going to dive into our next stimulating panel discussion, turning data into stories, how to repurpose analytics and research into compelling content. I believe that everyone will agree with me that raw data and numbers can be boring, but make a story out of it and you will have everybody's attention. Our esteemed moderator today is an international publisher of B Globing Publishing, and she's on the panel today leading. She is Dr. Angela Benavides. Angela, are you here today?
I am.
Oh, and you're mic'd up. She's going to be joined by some friends today. We have panelists. He was here yesterday, Mike Terlizzi, Director of Sarissa Marketing Solutions. Kate Pivacek, Director of Marketing at the Motive Group. Kaylin Query, CEO and founder of Kentucky Event Company. Anzali Syed, CEO of Digital Growth Factor. And last but certainly not least, Danielle M. Henry, Director of Digital Communications, Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our panel. If everybody's mic is working, I'm going to give you the floor.
Test.
You want to test it?
Better to find out now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're so excited to be here. Like she said, like he mentioned, I'm Dr. B. Angelica Benavides, known as the Ultimate Legacy Builder. I have an international publishing company and international speaker as well. And we're going to be introducing ourselves.
Hi, Mike is my name, and my company's changed its name. It's not Sarissa, it's actually called Simple Marketing, and it's working with early stage tech companies to simplify their message, explain their value in a way that a regular person can understand it, keeping it simple. So.
Hi, I'm Kate Pivacek. I work for the Motive Group. We are a startup consulting firm. We specialize in professional research and managed services for the travel and hospitality space. So we work with global companies, global brands, essentially around from everything from big brands to short-term rentals and other hospitality companies to achieve commercial success.
Hi, I'm Danielle Henry. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Danielle Henry. I am Digital Communications Director at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. We are a think tank devoted to advancing policies that uplift Black communities. So I work closely with researchers and research analysts to present their data in a compelling way.
I'm Kaylin Query. I'm from Kentucky Event Company. We're an event company based in Kentucky. We produce conferences, trade shows, events like this. We do it across the country in select European cities. I was recently in a bear fight, and I'm excited to be here. Or a skiing accident, whichever story you prefer.
Hi, my name is Ansari Syed, and I am CEO of Digital Growth Factor. We are a data-driven marketing agency. We specialize in performance marketing, specifically for e-commerce. We've been working with some global brands like Kate Spade, Coach, Adidas, Colhan, to name a few. And I'm personally consulting as well as a data-driven marketing consultant. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we're going to define what compelling is before we go deep into the data and defining it into a story, okay?
So compelling, I define it as whatever it is your target customer finds compelling. And the way you can find out what they do find compelling is by using data. And that's what I'd like to discuss with, or you would prefer to discuss. I would like you to discuss that, not me.
Okay.
And from my standpoint, compelling is whatever your audience wants to share or like or repost. It really isn't up to you. But anything that you can make clean and concise and engaging immediately becomes compelling to your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The theme is it's not up to you.
Exactly. You have to, your Your goal should be to be able to determine who your audience is and then being able to make it compelling to them. Now, how do you use data? That's the question, right?
So I'd like to start before everyone chimes in with how we use data in particular, but my expertise lie around more of how we can track data and how we can essentially set up ourselves for success in terms of data tracking. So as you all know, the world of data tracking and analytics is evolving every single day with new privacy concern measurement laws coming out in different jurisdictions of the world. So battling all of those privacy concern measurement laws, we all know that we're going into a cookie-less future, which is going to make tracking users more difficult. And when I say tracking users more difficult, that would essentially make data collection more difficult. So as we're now moving more from browser side to server side, my expertise lie more towards making sure that we're not just tracking certain clicks, we're not just tracking certain page views, but we're trying to track interactions onto our website. Interactions that are deeper, interactions that are more meaningful, interactions that present a better picture than just what people did on a particular website. So recently, we got a chance to implement measurement strategy for a pharma company that was basically trying to track users that were coming onto their website, interacting with different patient stories. Now, usually interactions that we track on different websites would be mostly video views, how many people have watched particular videos, what percentage of videos have they watched, how have they interacted with the videos between play, pause. But we wanted to step in even before the user decides to watch a video. So we essentially wrote some custom JavaScript to be able to get hover-based interactions sending data back to Google Analytics. So not only what videos were being played, but then also what the user is intending towards doing next. So their hovers in terms of heat maps would be able to tell us much more in terms of what particular videos they would want to open and what particular videos they're intending to open, and then what videos they actually open. So again, more going back towards the basics of data collection, I feel like we're now evolving into a world where we need to track much more interactions as compared to the tracking that we were used to seeing in universal analytics or now evolving into GA4. We just need to be able to better track our audience so that we can then turn it into a compelling story.
Wonderful. The way I use data is I use Facebook groups a lot. So my way of using data is being able to um, attract my prospects that are interested in the content that I have to offer. Then I track the ones that are joining the Facebook group. I'm sharing a lot of free content there. And then from there, I convert it into uh, inviting them to either a webinar, a summit that's also free. And then from there, I convert and I do my sales. And that's how I track my data depending on the group. And I have like a calculator Google form where I put the amount of per se the amount of money that I want to make or revenue that I want to make from that event, the number of participants in the group, and then the percentage that I'm looking for and converting. And then I just track it that way with that Google form that I have.
I'm gonna be straight with y'all. I hate Excel. Okay. I am not an analytics pro. I don't have a background. I'm a creative at heart, a writer, editor at heart. So when I hear data and analytics, it honestly, I want to run the other way, screaming. And I think a lot of people probably feel that way when it comes to marketing because marketing is so multifaceted. But if you look at studies year over year, the number one thing that's keeping CEOs up at night, the number one thing they can't feasibly predict is consumer sentiment and how that's changing and how it's evolving in the world today. And so when I think about data, to me, it's more about how are our customers and how are our audiences changing and how are their needs and desires, values, et cetera, changing and how can we respond to that to resonate better with them. So for me, it's more attitudinal than it is numbers on a screen. I wish I could understand numbers on a screen. I think I'd be unstoppable if I could, but I can't. But I think it's more about, how do you translate that into something that's meaningful to them? And our world's changing very fast, so that's more, kind of where data applies in my role.
I work with researchers, so
And I admire that so much.
yeah, data is my whole life. I think we're dealing with some harsh realities, especially when you're talking about the social media landscape. There's so much attention for eyeballs and so much fatigue because social media is, and I say this as a digital professional, it's a net bad. There's new research indicating that you post a link and people comment on it, but they don't ever click it. The vast majority of them don't ever click it. So I am realizing that I have to teach uh, our think tank data and visuals in platform because I may never get them to my website. And so, particularly on platforms like Instagram, where people are sort of there to take what you have and move on with their lives. So, I live and die by my graphic designers. We spend a lot of time with our heads together trying to figure out how to make things both clear and beautiful. Um, I really don't know what I would do without them. And I spend a lot of time with my researchers so that I understand what they're trying to say beyond all of the jargon so that I can deliver it to a generalized audience in a way that says, oh, this is information that is relevant to me and material to me, and everybody I know needs to know it as well. So it's a very interesting line I have to walk.
And I think from the event space, for us, what we're tracking things for us as far as actual, like how many steps, how many bodies came in, when did they register, did they actually show up, what's our sustainability. We're also tracking what did they like, what did they enjoy, what sessions were appealing, what sessions were not. And some of that's for us, but a lot of it is for our clients. So some of you may be marketing some of your internal products, services, ideas, but some of you may be working with other companies. So for us, for me, because typically I'm behind the scenes, I have to figure out what is my client trying to accomplish? What's the goal of the event? And then did we meet that mark with the content, the format, the layout, et cetera, et cetera? And then I use that to not only tell their story, for future events and ticket sales, but also to tell my story so that I can tell other future clients, here's what I did over here for this group, and I can do that for you too. As long as it's not a 5K or a fun run, because it's not my area. I have no data there. But anything else, I've got you. So I think you also, to the point earlier that you don't decide what's compelling, your audience does. I think you have to know your mission, whether it be for yourself or for your client, and then that will help determine what you're tracking. Hers is obviously actually very hard, real numbers that are very serious. Mine's more like, did they like the chicken or not? Yes or no. But for me, that's serious, right? Like, good chicken can make or break your event.
People remember what you feed them.
Right. Burgers and fries, we're not saving lives. She is. But it is important. So I think kind of tying it back to that, it really depends on your mission and your goal and your purpose as to what it is you need to track, how you're going to track it, and then how you use that to tell a compelling story.
I'm with Kate in the same respect of the data. I'm not that good at math. I had, just not my thing. But the data itself tells you what, and then if you can ask the right questions to someone who can analyze data, it can get you back to why or what, you just have to ask the right questions, similar to AI and generative AI. So.
Right. So for us, I think everyone in this room is very familiar with the digital marketing funnel where we take the audiences through awareness, consideration, conversion. So for us, we take a deeper approach and we actually take data into awareness, education, consideration, and conversion. And what we're basically doing is we're categorizing different events that we're collecting on different websites, different applications, and we're placing them into those specific buckets. So for example, if a person is coming onto a website and is starting a session, we would categorize it in the awareness bucket. Whereas if a person is coming onto a website and clicking on a resource page, we would categorize that at an education event. Then if a person goes down deeper and goes into actually taking a look at one of our products, we would consider that as a consideration bucket. And then if they finally decide to purchase, we consider that as a conversion. So our goal is now to basically drive more people down the funnel, right? And with these events, they help us educate which stage of the funnel our audience is currently stuck into. So all we need to do is essentially create those sort of funnel-based campaigns that are optimizing those events for machine learning algorithms for the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world, and then just push more people down each and every stage of the funnel. So the people that are in the awareness, we can take them into education. The people that are into education, we take them into consideration. And then finally, the people that are into consideration, we take them into conversion. So that for us is how we're kind of trying to tie the knot between data tracking, analytics, then event classification, and then at the end of the day, getting more actions for each website.
Great. The other question we would have, or we're going to answer, is what is the first step in turning raw data into a compelling story? Marketing purpose, for marketing purposes.
Understanding it. I think the key with raw data, any data, is that if you don't know what you're looking at, you can't tell that story. So you have to build trust between sort of the data creators and you. And sometimes I'm having conversations with the researchers where I'm just like, okay, I understand that 40% of folks made this choice. What are the broader implications? And we're a nonpartisan think tank. So, in addition to trying to examine broader implications, I need to do it in a way that is not seen as politically divisive, which, since everything is now political, is very difficult. But I do think marketers have to be a little bit of everything. You know, you have to understand a little bit about every topic so that you can give it to the people. One of the things I've greatly enjoyed about my career is that I ended up learning so much about every aspect of things I've tried to market, because if I didn't understand it, how was I going to communicate it to the buyers? Um, which is another thing I think I want to say marketers are smarter than we give ourselves credit for, and much smarter than the world gives us credit for. So let's own that. You know, it really is about you becoming a mini expert in a wide variety of topics in order to get it to people.
I may be the exception that proves the rule on that one. But no, I think going in, like you were saying, to data is knowing what you're like looking for and making sure, what is it you want to find out, and then making sure you don't end up with, as I have several times, a 300-page deck that you read through and get to the end of and say, and then, and what, so therefore, but there is no therefore. So, don't just do it. You have to make sure it's not a data dump. It's an actual, these are the insights I'm looking for. How can the data prove it? Go ahead and tackle it.
I would agree and disagree with that, and I'll elaborate. I think a lot of times we look at data and we look for the numbers we want to see, right? Like we look to validate our own perception, our own gut feeling, our own whatever. But that's not what data is for. Data is simply the most objective version of the events or the people or the attitudes in front of you. So data is only as valuable as its interpretation, to Danielle's point. And that interpretation means different things for different people. So, I mean, in B2B, I have to convince someone on a leadership team why they need to care about something with the same data that I'm using to help them convince their customers why they should care about it. And so it's, sometimes we have to take a step back and think, what are we really trying to find out? Do I want to confirm that this is my customer base, or do I just want to give myself a pat on the back because, hey, this aligns with what I, previously conceived? So let it be objective, because if you follow it, it leads to better business results. And I feel like that gets in the way of a lot of small business owners in particular, who are very, very tied in with their business, with their identity and their personal brand. You have to let go a little bit. Data's objective, you should be too.
I would also encourage you to find the why in what it is you're trying to create or the story you're trying to tell. Kind of off of what Kate and Danielle both said, you need to know what you're reading, you need to know what you're looking at, but to sell it to somebody else, you have to give them the why. Why should they buy? Why do they like you? Why do they want to connect with you? We buy from people we like, right? Nobody's bought, well, maybe some of you have, but I'm sure none of you have purchased from the really aggressive salesperson that calls that you don't know and you don't really care what it is they're selling, right? You don't like them, you don't know them, and the approach is just a direct sell, it's pushy, and there is no emotion or no why to it. Now, some of it isn't emotional, right? Like chicken's not emotional, but there are other things that I can connect with from an event standpoint that are directly related to the why. Why are you coming to this event? Why are you all here? Why are you selling whatever it is you're selling for yourself or for your client? Why are we needing to talk about the broader implications of this data that we found? Why? Why does this number matter? It's because of this bigger picture over here. So when you're turning this data into a story to tell people, whether it's just to inform them or it's to sell them something or to get them on board or to get a vote or to elect someone, you have to get behind the emotion of it and you have to get to the why. The data helps, but you got to know the why, and that's how you make it compelling. One of many things. Also chicken. Yeah.
No, and humanizing the issue is exactly what this whole topic's about, right? It's, you look at data and it says, okay, I'll just use an example that is relative to my industry, but, we did a survey and we found most modern travelers now, they really don't give a crap about all of the high-tech gadgets and AI and AR experiences that hotels and cruises and airlines are offering. They just want to be able to book and check in easily. The basics, right? And the emotion behind it is like me. I cannot stand when I get somewhere and I have to do 16 different steps just to get into my hotel room, right? And I don't care how cool the in-room technology is. I don't care how, much they've invested in it. I don't care about that. If I have a bad check-in experience, I don't want to book there again. And that's a commercial impact to that business. So the emotion here is frustration and resentment. And so, sometimes those are tools in your arsenal, and that makes it all the more compelling. And think about it from your own point of view.
If people want to give you their money, like a form at the end of a sale, make it easy. Take steps away because they want to pay you. So let them pay you. Don't get them frustrated and say, you know what, that's enough, and they leave, which is a big deal. It's like 85% cart abandonment rate is sometimes normal for B2C. B2B, I just wanted to mention real quick, there's also qualitative data, which is not numbers, but words. If you do in-depth interviews, it takes a long time, but you'll find trends, if you do it right, trends in the words they use, the phrases they use, and that's where you can really get to their subconscious mind of what really is their pain point. Because if you just ask them directly, a lot of times they'll give you a biased answer. So, but it takes a lot longer, and you probably do a lot of that, Danielle, with market research.
Qualitative data is my favorite data to
Yeah.
share socially because I can get video, I can get faces. I don't have to worry about dry numbers. I can get you to connect emotionally because there's someone there who already cares. Don't sleep on qualitative data. It can give you so much.
It is a thing. It definitely is a thing.
And coming back to how raw data would be used for compelling storytelling, raw data, most of us would agree is a nightmare for every single time we see all of those data points. And I believe the world that we're going forward to, it's going to get even more difficult because, as we know, each and every day, the data points that we're collecting on the audiences are increasing exponentially, right? So in that case, we've had several different conversations around having big data being done through different languages like maybe Python or R or Hadoop or just BigQuery in general. But at the end of the day, it all starts with, like my panel member said, is what the narrative you're trying to build. So when you take a look at the data that you have in front of you, you certainly have in your mind certain narratives that you think would actually fulfill. And then it becomes a story of where the numbers are going to lead you to. So when you have the raw data and you start normalizing it and start to convert it into some sort of a relational databases and start making relationship between those different variables that you have, the story starts unfolding for you. And then when that story starts unfolding for you, you're basically getting back to the different thoughts that you had before getting into the exercise. And then whichever thought the data aligns to the most is basically where you take your storytelling towards. So for me, it is a very exciting aspect when we just get raw data and it's coming from 10 different sources that have no commonality between them. But at the same time, for us as marketers, it's our job to somehow drive that commonality to be able to drive insights from that raw data that would otherwise not be visible to anyone that looks at it, right? So in a lot of cases, we're doing joins, we're doing right, left, natural, center, all sorts of joints to kind of get to where we want to. But at the end of the day, it is again going to get increasingly more difficult as we evolve and we start collecting more data for each and every interaction that we have with the user.
Okay. The next question, can you provide an example of a successful marketing campaign that was born out of repurposed analytics and research? You want me to say it again?
Oh,
So
no,
Okay.
are you asking me? Oh,
Oh, just
yeah.
anyone?
I was going to say that one of my first jobs was in B2C, as a sock subscription company. I'm actually wearing a pair. So, it's not anymore, so don't go to the website. It's terrible now. But when we started, we had no idea who the buyer was or the customer. We thought our assumption was it was, men, a little age 25 to 40 or something. And to bounce off your point about being objective and checking your ego at the door, we had to face the fact that we were wrong, and we tried to segment it by men and women and kids. And what we learned eventually through the numbers was that it was actually not demographic. The demographic was their behavior. Were they buying the gift for themselves, the socks for themselves, or were they buying it as a gift? Those were the two main things. So instead of men, women, children, it was gift it, subscribe for it. And then it would go into those different segments, because that's what the data was telling us. All the content we made would be targeted to each of those, a buyer or a non-buyer, a female, a woman, man. And generally speaking, the content was different for each of those segments. For men, transactional, just get to the point, tell them the discount, give them a thing to click, done. Because that's kind of like how, in general, I think men go to the mall, go and they get the thing and they're out. Whereas my mom tends to like to wander around a bit. I'm generalizing. I obviously realize that there's marginal cases, but that was what helped us define our segments. Was the data told us we were way off, and we had to repurpose everything because we were wrong, because we did check our egos at the door. So that just what Kate says is so right. You just don't go in and think your assumptions or your opinions are facts. Don't try to confirm them. Just be ready to be wrong, and it's okay to be wrong, because then you can be right.
So I can relate back to a couple of years where we were dealing with a retail shopping mall. They were doing quite well. They had a lot of footfall, but they had a question where they were spending the marketing budgets left, right, and center without having to actually realize what specific mediums are working well for them. And then because a lot of the marketing budget was being spent online by us, they were still not able to attribute a lot of the footfall that was coming onto digital mediums, whereas we would advocate that most of the footfall that's coming in is coming through digital mediums. So when we were quite perplexed as to how we should create like an online to offline bridge where we can tie down impressions or tie down people that are seeing advertisements for that shopping mall during a specific event, and then people that actually show up to those events. So we were able to create an online to offline bridge where we had started marketing the event that was happening inside the shopping mall. And we generally started taking people's name, number, and email addresses. And we gave them an opportunity to sign up for a lucky draw and win $100,000. Now, the whole point of taking this data firsthand was so that we can have analytics and insights as to who are the people that are hand raisers and are ready to actually visit the mall, right? And then they ran the same campaign across the other mediums as well, which included offline mediums, and people would have to sign up. And then digitally, because we had our funnel in place and we knew people that were getting aware of the event were then taking a consideration action by filling in a sign up form. So everyone that was filling in that sign up form, we would send them a code on their text, we would text them a code on their phone, and we would tell them that you need to show this registration code onto the customer service desk in order to get to your lucky draw entry. And when they would step into the mall and they would show the customer service desk with their code, the customer service desk would enter that code and generate the lucky draw entry free of cost. Otherwise, the lucky draw entry would have been if they would have spent $300 or more in the shopping mall, and then they would have to show the receipts for them. So it turned out that after the whole exercise, which then became a regular exercise for all of those events, we were able to turn our campaign and attribute 60% of the footfall towards digital mediums as compared to 40% which was on other mediums that were off online mediums. And then at that point in time, I remember 5 years ago, their marketing split was 10% on digital marketing and 90% on offline marketing. And now to this date, it's more or less 90% we're spending online and 10% we're spending on other mediums, just because they now have data to back the fact that people that are actually physically coming into the mall or into the shopping mall are actually people that are seeing advertisements on either TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and then they're coming into the mall, rather than the notion that they had before, which was basically serving print ads in order to get people into the mall. So this is how we were able to turn around a campaign and have better attribution to better inform where the marketing budget could spend by the customer.
Mhm. I used to work for, oops, sorry, y'all. Um, I used to work for a global hotel company that was just getting its B2B marketing organization off the ground. And it was the first campaign. We, really had nothing to start with, except we needed to be doing something because our competitors were doing something. And so we did the, qualitative interviews, and we, went through the quantitative data process and all that kind of stuff. And at the time, Gartner was doing, the research firm was, had kept putting out studies around what's actually driving customer loyalty in B2B. And year over year over year, the most prevailing driver of long-term customer loyalty wasn't price or any of the transactional things that we think about. It wasn't anything. It wasn't anything that we would normally think are associated with why a customer will keep coming back to you. Not discounts, not even quality. It was the actual experience that that person had working with the salesperson. It was their buying experience, their relationship. And so like, okay. And we look at the qualitative data, and we interviewed customers. We actually hired an outside insights firm to come in and interview customers. And, we, at the time, didn't win in price. We didn't win in rate. We didn't win in, we weren't the best. We were okay, but we weren't the best. But they loved our people. They loved our sales team. And so we used that and kind of combined those two pieces to create a campaign that was literally all about the relationship that we deliver through our salespeople to those customers, and all about the buying experience. And we had our actual sellers in the ads. We had quotes from them, and the response was incredible. And I mean, we got so much great feedback, and people were really excited to be part of it. And it just kind of, it further bolstered the idea, then proven, that it was all relational, and they loved working with us because of that and because of that emotion. So sometimes it's just a little bit of data. It doesn't have to be, sometimes you just need an answer. It doesn't have to be volumes and volumes and volumes of metrics.
I think you just reinforced Mr. Rogers' 3 ways to be successful. Be kind, be kind, be kind. And your sales force are clearly likable people, right? So that's.
Or they took them out to some really nice dinners. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes. The government instituted something called the Good Jobs Challenge. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. They funded some job creation programs. And my organization wrote 4 recommendations for how the Good Jobs Challenge could boost Black unemployment. And it's about a 3-page document, no charts, no graphs, no data. So I did an explainer on Instagram. What is the Good Jobs Challenge and how can it help Black unemployment? And we laid it out like a brochure. There were just, here's the information you need to know about the challenge. Here are our 4 recommendations and why they matter. Let's make this as pretty as we can image-wise. and it outperformed any of the other posts on any of the other platforms that I did for this challenge. So I just shared it everywhere. I was like, confused about the Good Jobs Challenge? Want to know more about our recommendations? Check out this explainer. It went like gangbusters. I think you can never be afraid to, we want to appeal to policymakers, obviously, who understand the ins and outs of things like this, but we also have to reach their staff, some of whom are just being inundated with things upon topic after topic after topic. Don't be afraid to simplify something. Don't be afraid to, you don't have to talk down to your audience, but don't be afraid to say, look, you're busy. Here's the information you need. Move on with your life.
So that's a great segue for mine. The events industry has seen a shift in the last few years to become more sustainable, waste-free events, limiting food waste, things of that nature. We, with our company, feel really passionately about this and have started implementing changes in our events and in our operations to be more sustainable. Um, it's expensive. It's not easy to do, especially with events, which traditionally are very wasteful by nature. A lot of facilities don't like to recycle. Composting is a whole thing. We won't get into the nitty gritty, but we're trying to get our clients to get on board with us to create these waste-free events or zero waste events. And because it does require some expense and it requires a lot of planning on the front end, we weren't really getting a lot of traction with getting folks to do it. So for a year, we tracked our numbers. We put out a report, and now we use that on the front end in talking to our clients during the discovery process about what they could include, what they would need to do budget-wise, and then what that would look like from a logistics, a floor plan, et cetera, standpoint. And 82% of our clients, after giving them this report, have planned for it in the budget and also have jumped on board with this zero waste practice. We didn't realize it at the time, but we heard from them after the fact that a lot of them didn't understand how to implement the changes. They wanted to do it, but they just didn't know how to make it happen. And by time we got there with the data, they had already solidified the budget. There was no flexibility there. They picked a venue that wasn't going to be conducive to a zero waste event, and so it was too late. So, at the end of the event, when we do the debrief, great, but they needed to know about it on the front end. So by providing this report, which is purely just data of our own events, we have been able to get these clients, most of them, not all, some don't care, and that's okay. We fired them. Just kidding, we just charged them more. So, but now they're slowly coming with us. We feel very passionately about it, and we try to align with companies that are similar to us, right? Have similar views and values. So this report has given us a tool to use to explain how to do it on the front end, and also shown them the results and the path. And it feels good, right? So we use that data then on social media and other places to say, hey, from 22 to 23, here's our increase in sustainability. From 23 to 24, we're tracking it. At the end of the year, we'll put out another report of hopefully how our numbers grew from last year to this year, as far as food rescue and waste-free and recycling and things of that nature.
So then as a publisher, one of the things that I do is the research that I do is to help the client become a bestseller. And in order to be a bestseller, then we do some research and looking at keywords to figure out what keywords will help the client get the bestseller status in different categories. And we also work on finding the right title. Now, a book will make you money if you know how to do the research and how to find those categories. But a book should really be a lead magnet that's going to help you find more clients and direct them to you, right? And then you're sending them to a free offer or connecting them to something else that you have. So that's something I do. It's very simple. And my perspective is simple. Okay, let me see what time it is. It's 2:45. So we have time for one more question, because at 2:45 we'll give you time to ask us any questions you might have. The next question: what are some common pitfalls to avoid when repurposing analytics into content, and how can marketers ensure that their data it's data driven. Stories. Let me repeat that. How can marketers ensure that their data driven stories are engaging and relatable to their target audience?
Uh, I would just start with, so before I was in marketing, I was a story producer in TV and stuff, and it translates to marketing. In that, what's the question is, what is the story? Define of a story. So a story in this context is basically something that emotionally resonates. That's basically, in a nutshell, what it is. It's not facts. People often confuse facts with stories. That's just plot. That's not a story. A feature of your product is not a story of your product. It's the solution it provides, because nobody wants your product or service. They need a solution to something. So, tell that story of the if maybe they're not aware they even have a problem. So tell the story of the problem, but use the data to help understand whatever metric you need to use to find it. There's different KPIs for everything. For laughter, for instance, is the only KPI for comedy. So there are different sectors and contexts that I'm going to stop talking now and let.
Don't accidentally misconstrue the larger message because you can make one data point tell a different story. So, we did some research on the financial status and aspirations of Black Americans post COVID. And I was really excited because there was this one really rough statement about like credit card debt. And I was like, the key takeaway is that there's too much credit card debt. No, the key takeaways is that more than 60% of the folks surveyed considered their financial situation to be good. And I was like, but I can get them. And if I put this here, everybody's going to click on it because it's going to scare them. And then we'll get more people to read our stuff. And the researchers were like, no, everybody's doing well. That is your message. You don't get to scare anybody. And that's fair and it's reasonable because I have to maintain that trust in those relationships and not like misconstrue their data just because I know it will get more attention if I put some fear factor into it. So I would say the big thing when you're looking at data is that you have to make sure that you are not manipulating it just for clicks and attention.
I would definitely agree to that and would like to add to that. Like, one of the major pitfalls that I see a lot of people falling into when it comes to looking at data and making data driven marketing decisions is the fact that they take a look at any KPI or any metric in isolation. And when they do that, what happens is they're actually telling half of the story, right? And when they're telling half of the story, they're actually taking the decision based on half of the story without considering what the other half would entail. So a recent example was we're structuring blogs and we're structuring how content is performing on a particular website. And most of the folks were very intrigued with the way that the data was coming in for bounce rates. And if you've recently gone through the transition from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4 back in July 2023, you would have realized that Google Analytics 4 doesn't give as much precedence to bounce rates as it would have as its predecessor, which was Universal Analytics. And you would be surprised to know that when initially people would come onto a particular website and you would consider bounce rates as a story to tell that that the page wasn't engaging enough for the user and they didn't like the content, which is why they bounced off of the website, right? But if you focus on GA4 and what they are taking forward as a metric is actually engagement rate, right? So engagement rate is the other side of the story for bounce rates, right? And the engagement rate is actually how many people came in and engaged with your website, right? So back in the day where there were websites that were focused more on like laptop screens and that had a wider landscape, right? And people weren't used to much of scrolling, bounce rates would make much more sense because of the fact that people would come onto a particular website and if they don't see the content on the front screen, they would bounce off. But now the landscape has evolved, and now more than 90% of the web traffic is coming in through cell phones. And that means that cell phones are actually less real estate when it comes to landscape mode, and it's more scrolling. So now at the same time, if a person is coming onto the website and is bouncing off, that's not a great metric anymore, because now if they're scrolling and if they've found all the information that they've had to, and they're done with the session, they're going to leave the website because you've given them all the information that they needed, right? Without them having to go into separate pages. So now this other side of the story is bringing in more towards the data and more towards the stories, where people are not just looking at different bounce rates to judge the effectiveness of the content that's flowing out, but actually taking a look at the engagement rate, which is 1 minus the bounce rate percentage, to get to the actual engagement rate for the particular article, and then judging and basing their judgment off of those particular read times that are towards those articles that are getting more engagement as compared to articles that have a higher bounce rate. So again, just the pitfall is that people are just looking at half of the story without realizing what the other half is. And I'm glad that Google has realized it, which is why they're now focusing more on engagement rate. But I just feel like more and more marketers need to know that to be able to make more informed decisions.
Panel,
Yeah.
we have time for 2 questions left. 2 questions.
Does anybody have a question?
Questions, comments, concerns?
Someone just, is that Kathy? It's Kathy.
All right. I'm not sure. I think the lady, if you don't mind answering this question in the gray jacket.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, this question is for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I incurred this with getting some data on people who will not buy from those they don't like.
Well, not.
Like salespeople. You mentioned your salespeople, that they liked your salespeople. But then what if you have a person that does not connect? They're good in a lot of other things, but they're kind of the outlier that's skewing the data.
Fire 'em.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Guillotine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that.
I mean, I think sometimes it's really helpful to have a third party do the research, right? I mean, in those situations, I mean, we work with a lot of B2B companies, and in that role, information is a trust currency, right? Be careful how you use it, don't misuse it, and I think another thing I was going to mention this, and I think it applies to your question a bit too, is how many of you have done a research project of any point, and this may not apply to everyone, but how many times have you done that after that? How frequently? Did you do it once and then 3, 4, 5 years later you do it again? Or do you do it and then you validate it and then you validate it? Research and insights is an ongoing process. It is expensive in a lot of cases. It shouldn't have to be, but research is something that needs to evolve with you and with your company and with your customers. They're evolving. If you're basing your decisions off of research from 3 years ago, guess what? They're different now.
Saying people change.
I think everyone evolves. Hopefully in good ways.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, we do. One more quickie.
Anyone?
Well, I guess that wraps it up.
Okay, well,
Thank
find
you.
us.
Round of applause for our
Yeah, they're going to
panel.
give their contact information real quick. Where can they find you?
You could go to LinkedIn and type in Mike Terlizzi or MikeTerlizzi.com, 2 Z's.
Okay.
LinkedIn, Kate Pivacek, Pivacek, or themotivegroup.com, or just Motive on LinkedIn, MODIV.
You can find me on LinkedIn. My middle initial is M as in Mary, but it's not Mary. But there's a million Danielle Henrys, so you need that M.
Aylin Query Caldwell on LinkedIn. I got married a year ago and I continue to forget that. Or KentuckyEventCompany.com. We'll go anywhere and we'll have great chicken.
You can reach out to me on my website, which is SYED ANNSALI.com, or LinkedIn with just Syed space and space Ali, and much more reachable on LinkedIn. So
If you want to be bestseller, go look for me. I have a vending table in the other room. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel.